Hi, my name is Tom and I'm an alcoholic. In November 2020, I was asked to lead an Alcoholics Anonymous men's step discussion meeting. The format of the meeting is for the leader to share their experience with one step in depth per week using the 12 and 12 book as a guide. I recorded my portion of the meeting to share with sponsees and others who could not attend the meeting. Thanks for taking the time to listen, and I hope that my message of recovery resonates with you. Tom, I'm an alcoholic. Thanks again for asking me to do this with the group here, and thanks for everyone for showing up. A quick intro for anybody who's new. I'm Tom. I'm an alcoholic. I'm an alcoholic and an addict, and an Al-Anon, and an ACOA, and a codependent, and throw any other thing that I could use to, run and hide from my feelings and bury my sense of self and get out of my head. I'll take it, or at least I used to. I call myself an alcoholic and attend primarily AA meetings because I found the solution for all of these things, including character defects, which I'll talk about in a minute, through AA's 12 steps to fellowship, a spiritual way of life, being a sponsor and being sponsorable. So AA is my home, it's my solution, and I've recovered as a result of the work I've done here. So tonight we'll talk about step 6 and start off with the introduction in the beginning of the book. Step 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. Step 6, necessary to spiritual growth. The beginning of a lifetime job. Recognition of difference between striving for objective and perfection. Why we must keep trying. Being ready is all important. Necessity of taking action. Delay is dangerous. Rebellion may be fatal. Point at which we abandon limited objectives and move towards God's will for us. And as you know, if you've been here the past couple weeks, I like to start off with why. Why in the world would I want to do step 6? And what does character defects have to do with drinking? And because I'm an alcoholic, and I thought we were talking about alcohol here. So I like to go back, and I do this personally because I have to do this when I do the work myself. Why do I need to be ready to have my character defects removed? Well, if I'm at 6, that means I just did step 5. Step 5 was I admitted to God, myself, and another human being the exact nature of my wrongs, which includes character defects, which means I'm probably very aware of what my character defects are right now. What are the things which are behaviors which I'm uncomfortable with, that I've acted out on, that I've caused harm to others? So I'm sitting with these right now, just completed my 5th step, and that gets pretty uncomfortable, having that knowledge of this stuff that I have done and these behaviors that I'm aware of, and it's uncomfortable. And I usually, the way I get comfortable again is to go back to drinking and drugging, and I don't want to do that. Well, I did a 4th and a 5th step because I made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understood Him, which meant I needed to do the rest of the steps. I made that decision in step 3 because I had come to believe in step 2 that I could recover from alcoholism, and I did step 2 because in step 1 I had admitted I was powerless over alcohol and my life has become unmanageable, and I decided to take step 1 because my life was pretty powerless in terms of my alcohol and drug use. It was pretty unmanageable in terms of the way I was living. And I was pretty hopeless and desperate, and that's what drove me into the programming and got me on this journey. So I don't want to go back to step 0. So I'm pushing forward now, and here I am at step 6. So again, I'd like to look at what the risks are and what it talks about the risks of not doing step 6. in the 12 and 12, I think that's on page 69, right at the end, it tells us, delay is dangerous and rebellion may be fatal. And, once again, Bill and the writers of the literature are threatening our lives. Fatal is pretty straightforward. It means if I don't do this work, if I don't look to become willing to have these character defects removed, I'll backslide and I could drink again. And for me to drink is a fatal proposition. There's other options as well. It may not be right away, but I could go through sober suffering. I could be well aware of my character defects because, again, I just did 4 and 5, and not get any relief from them because I'm not willing to move through 6 and 7. And sitting in that space of being well aware, having them kind of elevated in my consciousness because I'm doing this work here, or because I'm acting out on them so much, they're becoming prevalent, that my life is become unmanageable over again and uncomfortable. I really, really like going back to the paragraph in We Agnostics on page 52. It's the Bedevilments, and it says, we were having trouble with personal relationships. We couldn't control our emotional natures. We were a prey to misery and depression. We couldn't make a living. We had a feeling of uselessness. We were full of fear. We were unhappy. We couldn't seem to be of real help to other people. Was not the basic solution of these bedevilments more important than whether or not we could see newsreels of lunar flight? And of course, he's talking there about belief in a higher power. But those bedevilments happen to me if I'm not willing to continue on this journey of the 12 steps, if I'm not willing to have these character defects removed, because those items in there are essentially my character defects highlighted. So I know what the risk is. What's the plus side? I always like to look at for the promises. What's the benefit for me doing this work? Well, I was in a meeting a week or two ago, and there was someone came in counting days, and one of our group members said, welcome, you never have to feel this way again. And when I look at my character defects and the damage they cause, both myself and others, and that feeling that I get and have gotten from acting out of my character defect and having that remorse of, I can't believe I just lied again. I can't believe I just, raged out and screamed at my spouse or my kid again. Can't believe I cut corners and I'm feeling that, shame of, getting over again. Well, I as a sober man, I really start to lose my tolerance for feeling like that again. And I don't want to feel like that again. And I don't have to feel like that again if I'm willing to continue on in step 6, if I'm willing to have these character defects removed. I also never have to get that look again. I talk about the character defects and the damage that I cause others with the character defects. I don't have to get that look again from my wife, right? When I've done that thing again where I've gotten into an argument and I'm being so stubborn and wanting to be right and wanting her to just say, yeah, Tom, you're right. You've convinced me. But I will go down that road until my feet are raw from trying to stamp my way through and force my opinion to be right. I don't have to get that look again if I don't act out on these character defects. So that's the promise, that I don't have to disappoint my loved ones again if I'm willing to have these character defects removed. And then on the other positive note, in the literature, it says, I think right on the first page, we are trying to grow in the image and the likeness of our own creator. That sounds pretty cool. I putting the robes aside, the halo aside, the idea of that if this is going to put me on the road of being like my creator or like my true self, my true nature, if this action is going to remove the blockers or diminish the blockers between myself and my fellow man, myself and having a true relationship with myself, to find out who Tom really is, to remove the blockers between myself and my creator. That's motivation for me, that I just want to continue down this path. And then one last thing is, you may have heard a quote, I think it's attributed to Michelangelo, where he says that the beautiful statue is already in the block of marble. All he does as a sculptor is remove all the excess. So there is in each one of us a beautiful sculpture, our true nature, and these character defects are just in the way. And the more I remove, the better I look, and the better I act, and the better I feel as a result. So these are all my motivators when I start to look at step 6. The problem is, when I looked at this step the first time, and the 5th time, and the 20th time, I looked at it and it said entirely and all. Those are the 2 words I had a problem with at this step. I have to be entirely ready, and I'm going to ask to have all these defects removed. I'm not sure if I was willing to buy into either of those. The good news is that we're told that we don't have to. That this is a striving towards perfection. This is a striving towards being better. That I can start off with being willing to have these removed, which are objectionable, right? I can hold back as much as I want on the character defects that I don't want to let go of. We talk about, in all through literature, about these, instincts gone astray, or what's the word he uses? That they're far exceed their intended purpose, being out of balance. Yeah, like I like lust, right? But it talks in it. But so I don't want to become a monk. I don't want to be kind of completely write that stuff off. But again, I don't want to be so lustful as such that I don't respect the women that I meet and come in contact to. I want to be successful in my job, which might mean I need to cut some corners or stab some backs or jump up some rungs of ladder. Maybe I'm not ready to give that up yet. Maybe I'm still caught in the ego and trying to be successful, and that leads me to some other character defects. What this step does for me is it lays the groundwork for me to start to look at what's causing the most damage. Why am I, what's making me the most uncomfortable? What am I willing to let go of right now? And then hopefully the goal is that I stay sober long enough and I get enough relief and enough of promises and enough rewards emotionally, spiritually, that I'm willing to go further and I'm willing to go deeper. And that entirely, starts to get closer to me instead of it becoming never or at some point in the future, entirely starts to get closer. And I become very, very willing. And I look at it and go, you know what? All my character defects are up for grabs. Whichever ones, that, need to be removed, let them go. And, I've been sober over 30 years now, and that's exactly what's happened. I went from unwilling and not many to mostly entirely willing and almost all. And some days it's all. Sometimes I'm willing to give it all up, and I want to be closer to the image of my creator, and and sometimes I'm willing to suffer through being laid bare in front of, myself and my higher power and, my fellow man in my character defects, and accept the, that the humbling nature of, being exposed and having to confront them and willing to let them go. Bill talks about it here, the having been granted a perfect release from alcoholism, then why shouldn't we be able to achieve the same means of perfect release from every other difficulty or defect? This is the riddle of our existence. And I'm okay with riddles. I'm okay with the unknown today. I'm okay to, to let go to the mystery, to say, I wish I was perfect. I wish I was, relieved of all my character defects. Maybe I wouldn't be, I wouldn't suffer as much. And maybe, those around me wouldn't suffer as more. But I'm willing to go with the mystery of just looking at them over and over again, seeing where they come up and what circumstances, seeing where I'm imperfect, and being willing once again to let them go. So what else I want to talk about here? So character defects. We, in the fourth step inventory, we talked about some of the columns: selfishness, self-centeredness. We talked about our resentments and our fears and our harms done to other. But when I come to step 6, it sounds like I need to have a little bit more of a concrete list and some more specifics around what these character defects are. So, over the years, I've found some good resources, and they're actually worksheets. And I'm the kind of alcoholic that if you leave it up to me, I will soften my resentments. I was, soften my character defects. I will soften the amends I need to make. Having in black and white examples of what some character defects are is really helpful for me. So I've got 1 or 2 worksheets that I use, and I pass along to my sponsees when I work with them. Being dishonest, and it goes in alphabetical order. Disloyal, disobedient. Jealous, judgmental, justifying. It's great, because then I could put a pin in. Yeah, I recognize that in me. But the good news is that on the opposite side of that list are the character assets. What are the opposites? After a while, when I started to do the work, I realized that it was painful to me to always focus on the negative. That I needed to instead focus on the positive. Where am I going? Where would I like to head? What is the ideal? So I can instead, go, well, on this spectrum of, jealous to trusting, or judgmental to tolerant, where am I on that spectrum? And where would I like to be? So my prayers, and this gets a little bit of 7, my prayers tend to be, help me be a man of peace, help me be a man of love, help me be an honest man, help me be a supportive man, help me to be generous. Instead of asking to not be something, focus on the man I want to be. And again, that's the willingness. I'm willing to take a look at this list. I'm willing to open up to what's the opposite of that, and how I can be willing to be transformed. So the other piece I want to finish up with here is, at first my confusion around step 6 and step 7 was, how much of this was work I had to do versus how much was God going to take care of. And because my understanding of a higher power and my definition of a God has changed over the years. So is my approach to 6 and 7. So I think that this is a partnership. I think this is a partnership between me and my higher power, which I call the spirit of the universe. Some days I just call it God because it's a lot shorter. And I have to be actively involved with this. I have to make that decision of willingness. I have to identify my character defects and then be willing to have something change in my life. Again, this starts to blend into 7, which I'll talk about more next week. But there's actions I can take, right, to make myself willing, right, some of it is just praying for willingness, right? Meditate on willingness. Meditate on a character defect. Take a focus on something, for a particular time period. Maybe it's a week. I'll meditate on a specific, character asset or behavior that I like to be. And if I don't, in a particular time period, if I'm not, believing in a God that's interactive, that removes my character defects, I can look at it as the process, right? That I can be willing to have this process worked on me. I'm willing that the steps can work in the act of reversing my character defects by, praying, meditating, again, taking some action and being willing. That process in itself is being willing to have them removed. The point is that when I blow past 4 and 5 and jump right to 8 and 9 and give 6 and 7 lip service, I'm in trouble. I've done it before. It leaves me in that space of the bedevilments. It puts me in a space of, my character defects will be revealed to me. They will, raise their ugly head and cause me discomfort, and especially those around me who are experiencing them. And the other piece of that is, when I am connected with a concept of God, I've heard it said that God is a gentleman. He does not go where he's not asked, right? So, if I don't invite God into, my relationships with myself, with this program, if I'm not connecting with a higher power, I'm going to have trouble with 6, because I actively have to connect with that power and bring him in, right? So it's just like like a vampire. You gotta invite him in, otherwise they're not allowed in the house. So I'm not going to get help on my character defects unless I make that connection with the higher power and get them together in a partnership with me. Let's see what else I want to touch on. I guess a good conversation about 6 and 7 wouldn't be good without a good example. And so early on, I was really bad with timekeeping and character. My character defect was always running late, procrastinating, putting off to the last minute. And so I had a friend who invited me to a barbecue at his house, and he told me, "Oh yeah, come at 1 o'clock. That's when we're all getting together." And I show up at 1:30, which was on time for me, and no one was there. It was just him and his wife. And I said, "What's happened? Did it get canceled?" He goes, "No, I told everyone else it's at 2, but I knew if I told you 2, you wouldn't show up till 3. So I told you 1, so you would show up on time." And like being confronted with a character defect, and I thought it was no big deal. I didn't realize I was stealing from other people when I showed up late. It wasn't. I didn't realize I was being selfish as a result of procrastinating and not being on time. So my character defect got revealed at that point, I became willing because I finally saw the damage it was causing other people, and I then went on to look to 7 and how I was going to ask to have it removed. So there was a good example early on for me that at a couple years in the program when that happened. And then the other one is wanting to be right and having to get my wife to understand when I'm trying to explain something to me, especially to her, especially when we're in an argument, and she will say, "Stop talking to me," and that should be the big red stop sign that says, "Stop talking, let her cool down." But when I'm in my character defect and I'm in my ego and self, and not connected with the higher power, and I will force my way ahead and try to explain it. If I just say it this way one more time, a little bit more loud, she'll finally understand what I'm saying and believe me and say I was right. And that again is an example of a character defect that I have to sometimes hit a wall with in order to want it to be removed. And I'll finish up here with a quick fable I had read. I think I've shared this once before. I found this recently. It's called the Downstream Fable. The story is that there's this town that lives on a river. One day they saw someone trapped in the river floating downstream. They quickly rushed out and grabbed the person out of the water and took care of him, got him healthy. And then afterwards, next couple of days, months, these people just kept floating down the river. People who apparently were trapped or something and fell off a bridge. They had no idea, but they got really busy, figuring out ways. How can we get these people out of the river quicker? Let's set up a medical tent nearby the river so we can get them help right away. They developed early response systems so they could, detect people quicker and get the word out. And they got really good at pulling, bodies out of the river and getting them help. They never went upstream to look at why people were going in the river to begin with. And the promise of 6 is I can stop the bodies from going in the river in the first place. Being really good at making amends is not great when I'm causing all the problems to begin with. And that's where 6 comes in, is where I look at the promise of I don't have to make as many amends. I don't have to, jump into the river and pull the bodies out that I threw in upstream a long time ago that I didn't even realize. So in step 7 next week, we'll talk about how not to throw bodies in the river, and not to make the same mistakes over and over again, or at least not as bad as the time I caused before. And again, I want to thank everyone for being here tonight and listening to me. Hopefully I gave you a good discussion on step 6.